Hello and welcome to the Golf 12 Hours for 2022 and welcome to the world famous Yas Marina Circuit. In the background down here in the pit lane, cars are making their way out in front of the garages. They've had the last hour to put the final finishing touches to the cars following the last of our free practice sessions. And now we have 4 segments of qualifying coming up, 15 minutes for each of potentially up to 4 drivers per car. Now, the weather here at Yas Marina is normally incredibly sunny and incredibly warm. This afternoon, the weather has changed slightly. It's a little bit overcast now. There's a breeze in the air and conditions that I don't know in the last 5 years here at the Yas Marina Circuit for the Golf 12 Hours. So a little bit cooler, and I would suggest maybe that's going to be better for quick lap times in qualifying. We're about to find out in the commentary box. A very warm welcome to David Addison and Mark Werrell.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Yeah, great to be back here in the Middle East. This 11th running of the Gulf 12 Hours, and you look at the entry list that we've got over the course of this weekend, because it does form part of the final round for the Intercontinental GT Challenge. It's not only a large entry list, it also is a very strong entry list. And we were discussing it when we were looking through free practice earlier on today, David. It's really difficult to know what's going to go on in this qualifying session. We've seen cars very close to each other in terms of times. This qualifying session, of course, what we do is we get all of the drivers qualified, whether it be a 3-car team, or a 3-driver team, whether it be a 4-driver team, and then we average the lap times across all of them. It's going to be close. I simply don't know. Mercedes, as a manufacturer, on pace, look as though they might have a slight edge, but we simply don't know.
Well, it's going to be a fantastic qualifying session, and it's building up nicely for what should be a great race. The first time we've had a continuous 12 hours for the Gulf 12 Hours rather than 2 6-hour parts, and it's the final round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, and there's a title on the line there for the overall drivers to be slugged out. There's an awful lot to look forward to, and much of that is going to be based on what we have over the next 4 15-minute segments as the grid is formed. The race this year has a 34-strong entry. It is numerically perhaps better than ever.
Yeah.
It is almost the biggest GT3 grid we've had in the UAE. Certainly in terms of the driver quality, it's the best.
For sure.
We have top teams, top drivers. We've got all the major GT3 brands going toe-to-toe. We've got a battle in Pro, a battle in Pro-Am. We've got the GT Cup. There's an awful lot that is going to keep us entertained over the course of the race. This qualifying session, though, I can't wait, because now it is one driver against the clock in each of these segments. We can look at their respective lap times. Of course, yes, we've got to average them all out. But, yeah, this, when you've got the drivers going through qualifying with a lighter fuel load but sticker tyres and only having to think about a lap time, this is going to be good.
It's going to be. I really can't wait. You know, we've got some former winners of this back, so we've got the likes of Martin Kodrich and Isa Al Khalifa, who have won back-to-back Gulf 12 Hours with 2Cs Motorsport. They won here in their Mercedes in January. They won the Gulf 12 Hours Bahrain edition that we had in the early part of 2021 due to COVID pandemic at the time. Also sharing the car with those on those 2 occasions, but moving over to Inception Racing for this weekend and the McLaren is Ben Barnicoat. He's twice a race winner. We've got 4 times former Gulf 12 Hours David Rigon back racing for AF Corsa, which as a team have won this in the past. We've also, of course, got the likes of Kessel Racing, Attempto Racing and 2Cs, as we mentioned, all as former winning teams. So every little box we can tick, can't we, in terms of all the front runners and all of those that have been successful over the years are here. And you're talking about the manufacturers as well, David. Well, the last 4 editions of the Gulf 12 Hours have been won by 4 different manufacturers, because the 2Cs Mercedes won it in January, the 2Cs McLaren won it on the race prior. Attempto Racing did it in the Audi, and prior to that, it was Kessel with a Ferrari.
There is only one car on this grid which has a driver in it that hasn't won a championship. In other words, every car, bar one, has got at least one driver who has won a title. I can only count for one where at least one of the drivers hasn't won a championship. That illustrates how good an entry we have this year, whether it's been in GT3 racing or national racing, but with the exception of one car, every other car has some sort of title winner in it, which is a quite extraordinary fact as you look then at the queue of cars getting ready to go for Q1. It's dead straightforward this. It is 15 minutes, get the work done early. It'll be a new set of tyres. You can't refuel, you can't take fuel out, so it's down to the natural fuel burn to get the cars lighter and lighter. In other words, keep your gun for hire, keep your quickest driver Q4. If it's a 3-driver entry, Q3, 4-driver entry, Q4.
I'm going to ask the question now just to check if my notes are correct. Which car is that? Is it the 99 Audi?
That hasn't got a title winner.
Yeah.
No, I'm going with the 58 Mercedes.
Ah, right, 58 Mercedes, right, okay.
Yeah. I'm willing to be corrected on this, but that, by my reckoning, just illustrates how competitive it is. Right, let's get on with this, because this is going to be good. We've been looking forward to this all day. A word about the circuit as well, Mark. It's just over 5 kilometres in length. It's got some very fast bits. It's got some tight bits. The first element, it feels like a proper race circuit, which it is. The second element round the hotel feels like a street circuit, because the way it's been designed, it almost feels narrower than it is, and you stand up against the barriers, and that's when you start to appreciate just how close to the wall people come. Here, yes, people can get it wrong, but in that second part of the lap, the circuit can bite perhaps far more than it can in the first section.
There's a much larger consequence, isn't there,
True.
elsewhere around the lap than there is at the beginning of the lap. And of course this circuit subtly reprofiled over the course of the 2020 to 2021 winter, so there's more of a banked section as you head round through turn 9 now than they used to be. And they also revised, of course, the final corner, turn 16 was subtly amended as well, so it's a very slightly shorter circuit than it would have been a couple of years ago. So the cars are ready, the teams are ready, the marshals are ready, and we're about to get qualifying underway. We were discussing this earlier on. It's 2 minutes for an out lap. You then need to get on it straight away, because the sweet spot for these Pirelli tyres, which all of the cars are running on, is going to be in the first or the second flying lap. Get the lap in the book, get the car back to the pit lane, allow the team to service the car and get it ready, because there's only 10 minutes of respite between each of the 15-minute qualifying segments.
What is also going to be interesting, and really this is the first time we're going to get any sort of an answer, is whether this is going to be a circuit that favours grunt or aero. And I'm thinking Mercedes AMG for grunt, and I'm thinking Ferrari for aero. And Alan Hyde is in the pit lane, and he might well have a thought on all of this.
Well, the thought I've got is about the weather, because when we started the qualifying coverage, we mentioned the fact it's getting a little bit more breezy. There are a few more clouds in the sky, and I was just standing in the pit on the pit wall next to Danny Juncadella, and we both looked skyward, and I said, do you know, I think it might. He said, yeah, we think that too.
Oh, okay. And if it is, it's going to come later, which might throw the plan out the window for Q3 and Q4. So, Mark, banker lap suddenly becomes important.
It comes enormously important, doesn't it? Get that banker lap in nice and early, and even more so, as we have seen so many times throughout testing yesterday and through 3 practice earlier. Don't run beyond the circuit limits. You run beyond the circuit limits, that banker lap is very quickly going to get taken away by race control. So you've got to drive with your head.
Now there is Mauro Engel in the number 98 Mercedes. Mauro, who won the GT Cup at Macau this year, not for the first time, and is always a man to watch. He goes first in number 98, the sister car, 89, out of the Grupper M stable. It's got Raffaele Marciello at the wheel, which I think we were predicting a little earlier might be the way they run it. So you've got 2 very, very rapid cars there. Now, Q1 is always easy, because the grid order would be what you see. Q2, Q3, Q4, that's when you have to start to worry about the average. So you're getting times and an order for that isolated 15 minutes, but of course the actual grid order, barring any penalties, is going to be the average. And the pit lane is getting busy, as 1 or 2 have done an installation lap and are then going to go back out. Number 11 Ferrari there, which is the Kessel Racing entry. Getting set to venture out, the car of Nicola Sciuro, Nicola Rossi, Marco Pulcini and Emanuele Tabacci. And the first gun time is done by Ollie Milroy, Gold Cup winner in Fanatec GT Endurance Cup this year. There is the Inception Racing McLaren, the team managed by former racer Bas Linders, and Ollie Milroy does a 1:53 as Davide Rigon gets into the 52 straight away.
Yeah, so 4 times the Gulf 12-hour winner. Davide Rigon goes quickest at the moment. Ollie Milroy cracking on with lap number 2 at the moment. He is slightly quicker through the first sector than he won on his first flying lap at this stage, but at the moment Davide Rigon is about 0.6 of a second quicker than him, and was about 0.5 of a second quicker on his flying lap through just that first sector alone. So Ollie Milroy is going to keep pressing on at the wheel of the car that he shares over the course of this weekend with former winner Ben Barnicoat and also Brendan Arieb.
Straight away, track limits are a factor. Dennis Marshall for Attento. The lap that he's on is disallowed. That's his first flying lap, and the time will be irrelevant because it's not being allowed. He has transgressed at turn 2. Others are going wide at turn 16, which is the end of the lap. So just keep it within the line. Just get a time in.
Yeah.
Push on your second lap if you want to be really courageous about it, but just get a banker lap in. Davide Rigon then is the fastest.
Today's been a much better day as far as not having red flags were concerned, but it's also been the day of track limits. There were multiple reports during the first free practice session, which was 2 hours long, that I think the timing screen was never clear of a warning.
No, and the team in race control that are looking at track limits, I mean, they were rushed off their feet in the 2 free practice sessions earlier on, to the point that an extra pair of hands, I think, had to be brought in at one stage. Raffaele Marciello goes fastest, 1:51.950 then. So that puts him 16 thousandths quicker than anybody else. And the road is getting busy, isn't it? Even though it's a long lap, everybody has managed to find a little bit of traffic. 25, the Santa-Lock Audi there, with Christopher Haser at the wheel, the massively successful German driver, and still very much somebody you would want in your armoury for a long race like this.
Yeah, he's very quick, isn't he? Christopher Haver's been enormously successful. The number 25 Audi, after its first run that he did, 1 minute 52.671, sees him 4th quickest as things currently stand. Nice to see also there, just a brief shot of the number 95 Cup car out. So that is one of the dual racing by Toro Verde cars out. They didn't appear in free practice 5, which caused us a little bit of concern as to why we haven't seen that car, but allegedly they just wanted to save the car. They didn't want to risk it. They wanted to make sure that it was ready to go for qualifying. So sensible thinking there by dual racing by Toro Verde.
Not only in terms of saving it for the race, but straight after this they go to the Dubai 24 hours, so restricting mileage to a degree is in their mind. 71 Ferrari then. This is Antonio Fuoco, another single-seater gun turned GT hero, and Antonio Fuoco, who came close to winning the Fanatec GT Europe Endurance Cup this year, makes his way then now down towards that hairpin, towards the back of the lap, down at turn 9. This is the re-profile bit that Mark was talking about earlier on. It's also where we had a fairly large Ferrari accident in the January edition.
Very much so, wasn't it? That was, I think, the only safety car period we had in January, and it was, in the first part of the race, wasn't it? Yeah, no safety car periods in the second part of the race at all. So Antonio Fuoco was very quick through the first sector last time, but didn't quite knit the full lap together. So a 1 minute 52.874 was his best. We did briefly have an Audi go to the top of the times there, but I think, again, was that track limits? Lap time was removed?
I think Raffaele Marciello went quicker,
right.
fractionally. He's done a 51.762 now as the traffic gets in the way slightly here. Antonio Fuoco, look, coming down towards turn 16. He's managed to find the number 1 Mercedes just up the road, the 2C's entry that's got Hunter Abbott behind the wheel of it, but Antonio Fuoco breaks the beam. And the Ferrari then is 7th, didn't improve on that lap. So it is Marciello Mercedes, Marshall Audi, and a very, very good third for the much underrated Philip Ellis, the German-Swiss-British driver, Audi TT Cup champion. And in the Pro-Am entry with Kenny Harble and Martin Conrad, who are this year's Pro-Am IGTC champions, he goes first and he's gone third.
Yeah, it could be a car to watch out for in Pro-Am, couldn't it? That number 75 car going beautifully well. Yeah, good.
And over 12 hours, don't rule out Pro-Am cars for getting on the podium.
I wouldn't surprise me if we saw a Pro-Am car on the podium. Less likely, as we've seen in the past, a Pro-Am car to win overall. Largely, again, back to that strength in depth that we've got over the course of the entry list for this weekend. Who's quickest in GT3 Am at the moment? It is newly crowned British GT champion, the Ram Racing number 8 Mercedes in its fantastic D2 livery, is quickest in GT3 Am at the moment, and the quickest of the Cup cars, David, will be outside of the top 28, won't it? Just be 29th onwards at the moment, and
it's going to be the race event car,
race event car number 40, which has largely had the pace all weekend, hasn't it?
Yeah. Right, you're looking at Philip Ellis here, underneath the W Hotel, up towards the end of the lap, comes out of turn 15 then, and short straight, avoids pit in on the right, down towards 16, turns right, accelerates up towards the beam, and on this lap, in terms of sectors, he was looking reasonably good. You've got Dennis Marshall behind him, who's going to go quicker still too. Second he was, breaks the beam, and the lap time is slightly down again because of the traffic, as Raffaele Marciello then remains at the top of the times. Philip Ellis didn't go quicker because of slower cars around, plus also, the lap time was disallowed because he went wide at turn 1. 93, the Sky Tempesta Racing McLaren is in strife. And who have we got behind the wheel of it? It is Kevin Say. Now, where has he done that, Mark? That is that coming towards 16? towards the end of the lap. If that car can't get going, this is going to be a problem. So Kevin Say, Garage 59 have entered the car, runs in that Sky colour scheme, and hopefully we'll be able to get it going. If you've stalled it, there's a kind of reset time, like 30 seconds or so. The car has to sort of catch its breath and then it can be fired up again.
Fired up. It's the end of the lap, isn't it? I think it is turn 16 where he's had the off, so car's stricken on the very outside edge of the circuit. Now that is not only a problem for Kevin Say and the team, it's a problem for every other driver that's on the flying lap, because of course yellow flags are out, they've got to ease off, and ultimately with that car stricken, we are going to see the red flags come out onto the circuit, and it's usually the case. As soon as the red flag comes out, the car gets going.
I can hear the groan from the race director Peter Roberts 3 floors down, because that is exactly what he was trying to avoid. He'd given them time, given them time. Okay, it's not going to fire, and it fires. And how did he get there? It was all self-induced, wasn't it? Coming out of 15, and the car rotates. It was off the road at that point, wasn't it? The wrong side of the curb. But it's the momentum that brought it back into an awkward place. Right, the clock stopped with 4 minutes to go. There's just about time for a lap time if you're at the head of the queue, but I wonder how many are going to take the opportunity.
And it does become increasingly a race against time, because it has, in the last 10 minutes, become much more blowy. It's really quite windy. Have a look at the flags around the circuit. Yeah. It's really quite windy now. And I just spoke to a very famous motorsport photographer down in the pit lane that said, rather amusingly, I didn't come all this way for weather like this, because I think we're all rather thinking that maybe the weather is going to change.
This is a photographer who lives on the doorstep of Silverstone, I would suspect.
It is, funnily enough, yes.
So, not that it ever rains at Silverstone, but he knows about British weather in general, Jacob Ebring. Right, so there is the offending McLaren that Kevin Say brings back to the pit lane. And, as I say, 4 minutes and 28 seconds. The clock stops because it's qualifying. Now, if you think about a flying lap being 1 minute and 51 at best, and so an out lap is going to be, let's call it 2.5, especially if you're at the back of the queue, there's not much time to do a lot here. I suspect a lot of teams will bail from this and just cycle the next driver ready. I'm
about to see whether there is going to be a question of bringing the car to a stop and turning it off for this segment. But at the moment, and I'm at exit end of pit lane, I'm not seeing that.
OK. Well, the drivers are coming back to the teams. The team will decide whether they feel it is worth going again, because, of course, the other element is that, time aside, any temperature you got into the tyres is about to disappear
as well. That's a difficult thing, isn't it? Yeah, when they first go onto the car, of course, they're fresh out of the tyre ovens, but whilst they're sitting there in the pit lane, all of that tyre temperature goes straight away. I think there might be a few takers for it, David, and that's largely going to be if somebody hasn't quite got the lap strung together, if somebody has had a lap removed because of track limits infringement. So if they think they're not quite where they ought to be, and they're a second away from where they ought to be, roll the dice and try and get a slightly better lap in to improve the average lap time. But if they think that they've ultimately achieved what they want in that session, why would you? Why would you go back out?
So Raffaele Marciello out of the car, the 89 car, the first car in pit lane next to the pit exit, just brought the car to a stop, and he's climbed out of the car and is now talking to Danny Giucadella.
OK, Alan, thanks for the moment. The one that this has bitten is Mauro Engel, who had done a personal best and then an absolute best in the first sector of that last lap. But, of course, he couldn't finish the lap because the clock was stopped, the session was red flagged, and he's only 17th. So Mauro Engel was building up to get the car catapulted up the order in Q1, and this has gone totally against him.
And he has just come to a stop behind Raffaele's car, and Mauro Engel remains at the wheel of the car.
Right. So, and that's the car that, not today, but yesterday, when we had a few issues on circuit, that was another car that was in strife yesterday as well, was it not, that car?
That's one that Lucas Auer
put in the barriers.
Yeah.
And Mauro Engel told us this morning that the team were just finishing preparing the car, and what did it do? Immediately go to the top of the times in the first free practice session. So I think the team had a productive night, I think it's fair to say.
That's the way to repay the team for the hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed so. Well, Mauro Engel, who I'm sure we will hear from during the course of the weekend, that most Australian of Germans. Great character is Mauro Engel, and after his time spent in Australian V8 supercars, has got a proper good Aussie twang, but he's a ever smiling, very, very hard-charging driver. And if you haven't yet done so, and Alan might back me up on this, go and have a look on YouTube for the first couple of corners of the Macau GT race between him and Raffaele Marciello. You won't be disappointed.
Back you up. It rewrote first laps of a motor race.
It was something special. It was, mighty. And you never know, we might get it again on the first lap of this race tomorrow.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows?
For now, it is Mercedes, Ferrari, Audi, the top three. Marciello, Fuoco, Marshall, the order. We've gone green again, and there are quite a lot of takers.
Engel straight out, absolutely on it.
I'm putting my surprised face on here, Alan, but it's not working. Yeah, he's a man on a mission, isn't he? So, hang on to your hats, everybody. Maro Engel means business.
So, back out onto the circuit. Let's say for those that are at the back end of the queue, they've really got to push on this outlap, haven't they? And not just because time is against them. You've got to push because you've got to get that warmth back in those tyres, because you're only going to have one shot at the quick lap.
Exactly. I mean, the only benefit to lagging back is that you get out of the traffic.
Yeah.
But like you say, you're then in jeopardy of almost missing the cut to do the flying lap.
Lucas Stoltz is a taker as well. The number 77 Mercedes just heading down pit lane as well. That's the car that's fifth quickest, of course, for Lucas Stoltz, lying fourth overall in the Intercontinental GT Championship standings. Mathematically, could still stitch up that championship come the end of the 12-hour race tomorrow, but it needs all the stars to align for him, doesn't it, really?
As shots go, it's a long one.
Yeah.
It would need for Lucas Stoltz to win the race. It would need for the Marciello Gounon-Joquidea car not to finish, and therefore they'd be tied on points, and they'd have the same number of wins and seconds, and then on a tie break, Lucas Stoltz would win. So it is very much an outside possibility, but it is possible. Christopher Haase is being looked at for possible blocking. Now, that's interesting for a hugely experienced driver. It might be that there are mitigating circumstances, but an incident involving number 25 possible blocking noted by race control.
So that will be looked into. So Maro Engel straight out and pressing on, say only 17th quickest at this stage, but as David alluded to, he was on a good lap at the time that the red flag came out. He had set a best first sector of anybody over the course of this qualifying session, but could not continue the lap. Also heading back down pit lane is the second of the 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes, but looking as though they are done in this session is Salakin and their Porsche in the hands of former World Championship cyclist Tom Bonham.
Yeah, that's the car that's got, amongst others, Peter Cox driving it. A great character, Peter Cox, another driver that's been around the block a few times.
I'm sure Alan will catch up with him over the weekend.
Absolutely, because there's nothing he's not raced over the years. GT cars, single-seaters, touring cars, you name it, he's been there and got the T-shirt, Alan.
It's a while since I've spoken to him, back in Super Touring days, and I look forward to it.
Good man. Well, so do we, because Peter is another of these very, very rapid Dutch drivers. He's not the youngest of Dutch drivers anymore, but he's got his daughter Stefan driving the car with him, and he's a very quick driver still. Right, the team manager of 99 is heading to the stewards. Christopher Haase is being looked at. I think I told you that. We are about a minute and a half away from the flag coming out, and Raffaele Marciello is the fastest. But, Mark, how is Maro Engel doing in sectors? What's he up to?
At the moment, through the first sector, Maro Engel is slower than he has previously gone, so it's not quite working for him at this stage. Now, he's not that much slower than he's previously gone through the first sector, and largely, for every other car that has just completed an outlap and is going around, he's quicker than most.
Yeah.
But it's not happening through the first sector. It's also not quite happening through the second sector either, so I'm not sure it's quite going to do what he wanted it to do this lap.
All right, OK, let us keep an eye, because he can squeeze possibly one more out of it. Whereabouts is he on the racetrack? We're looking at the Maro Engel Mercedes, which is number 98.
He should get over the start-finish line before the clock ticks to 0. Yeah, he's about 20 seconds away, I think, from completing the lap, and has 40 to go. Right,
OK, so, yes, he's got no traffic around him either. So he's teed this up nicely. If he can wring the last lap out of the session. Here he comes up towards the line. There is 77. That is the Mercedes that Lucas Stoltz is behind the wheel of. That's the car currently that is 6th in the times in Q1. Storms then down towards the hairpin, down at turn 9 on that back part of the circuit. And so for Engel, let's see what he can do before the flag comes out here. He's gone second already, 1:51.806. That's your answer. The checkered flag is out, and Maro Engel then is second fastest.
Yeah, perfect lap in the end. It didn't quite happen on the first one, but he's nailed it on that one, Mauro Engel. And he got over the start-finish line with a bit of time to spare, so I can't imagine he's going to stick with another lap, because that's sort of done what he wanted it to do. So I'd imagine he'll probably come into the pits at the end of this particular one. But at the moment, we've got the two Gruppa AMG Mercedes, first and second. Raffaele Marciello fastest, Mauro Engel second, and then the leading Ferrari at the moment of Antonio Fucci, third at the moment. So that's been a good run from him, hasn't it?
Yeah, again, somebody that has become very much a Porsche specialist, Antonio Fuoco, in a short space of time. And after racing in Fanatec GT in the World Endurance Championship as well, knows the cars very, very well indeed. Former race winner in FIA F3 and front runner in Formula 2. Right, so there is Mauro Engel heading to the checkered flag. He's gone quicker again in the first sector. He's not done yet.
He's not, absolutely. Quicker than he's previously gone through the first sector. Was only just slightly slower through the first part of the lap as well. So Mauro Engel is sticking with this lap, absolutely, as he heads his way through turn number 15 and now up towards turn number 16. I thought he might come in at the end of this one, but he's going to see whether he can stamp his authority on what is the first aspect of qualifying. Over the start-finish line will go Mauro Engel, and goes to the top of the times with a 1 minute 51.532. That is nearly a quarter of a second quicker than anybody.
Right, Alan, your first stop is Mauro Engel's door when he gets into the pit lane. I suspect he's going to be a very happy man.
I'm very happy to do that, and so too with the team, because it was a spontaneous round of applause. He left the pit lane with such a sense of urgency. It was absolutely fantastic, so I'm standing by.
I have every confidence. Excellent, well done. Right, so, yeah, I mean, we were discussing, is he going to have another go? He's done what he needs to. He's got himself up to near the top of the times, and he went quicker still.
Yeah, from 17th to 1st, wasn't it? Did briefly see that there were a few cars that were under investigation with regards to improving out on circuit when there might have been localised yellows, but that only flashed up very, very quickly indeed before it disappeared. Also, the team manager for Treso Attempto Racing is being asked towards race control. That's the number 99 car, which has just been driven by Finlay Hutchinson in that particular qualifying session. But yeah, now we get, again, the signal coming up, several cars under question for improving whilst under yellows, one of which is the car that's just on quickest in this session, Mauro Engel.
So, which was the yellow? Because I didn't see anything at the end of the session.
No.
So, if Mauro Engel were to have transgressed earlier, that might not necessarily affect the subsequent lap time. That might have been, for example, when we had the Garage 59 Sky McLaren parked by the side of the road.
You know the good thing? We don't have to worry, do we?
No. We can speculate, but we don't have to actually make a decision.
Just to confirm, Mauro is still top of the screens at the moment.
Yes, indeed he is, quite right. Yes. But as Mark's been saying, there are 6-7 cars that are improving under a yellow noted, but that might be the yellow that triggered the red, so anything that's after that might be okay.
Good. Should be good, yeah, you'd like to think so.
Right, well, that's certainly got appetite whetted, hasn't it? Mauro Engel, Raffaele Marciello, Antonio Fuoco, Mathieu Drudi, 4th in the end. Philip Ellis, that we were praising earlier, 5th. Luca Stoltz, 6th. Christopher Haase with a Damocletian investigation hanging over him, 7th. David Irigon, 8th. Simon Gachet, 9th. And David Fumanelli rounding out the top 10. There's a quality top 10 for you.
Very much so. Yeah, Ollie Milroy just outside of the top 10 with Nicolo Schiro in 12th position. Ralph Bollner in 8th place. Kevin Say was 9th, and the sister car from Garage 59, Alexander West, was next up. Hunter Abbott, Finlay Hutchinson, Jamie Stanley, Ian Loggin, James Cottingham completing the top 20. But now, very quickly already, we can see the cars are being moved from the position which they pulled in the pit lane. They're up on the dollies. They're parking them at 45 degrees, because it's not going to be that much longer before part 2 gets underway.
No, indeed. It will be in just under 6 minutes' time that the green flag is waved, and Q2 gets underway. And this is where the graphic on the TV pictures, as I understand it, is going to reflect the order within the individual session. Our timing screen order, although it will have the individual session times, the actual order it's displayed is going to be in the average order. So we'll be talking about the grid order rather than the individual 15-minute segment, which ultimately is more important because that's how they're going to start, barring any grid penalties. So right now it's dead straightforward because Q1 is is it. That's it. But from here on in, we have to start doing averages. Were you good at maths at school?
I thought I was all right. Miss Quarmby always told me otherwise.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she did,
Oh,
I'm afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I hope she's not watching this, then. But things, mercifully, are assisted by the timekeeping service for this. So Q2 coming up. Drivers then clamber on board. Morgan Tilbrook to go next for the Ram Racing team, taking over from Ian Loggy, who has barely missed a weekend of racing, hasn't he? What, with British GT, with Fanatec GT, with Radicals in the Middle East, with Carrera Cup GB. What have I missed?
GT Cup.
Oh yes, thank you. Yes,
GT
yes.
Cup. Yeah. So yeah, I was talking to Ian over the course of yesterday, and he did say, I think it's nearly 80 races this year he's done in total. He did say not going to do that amount next year. He's still going to do a lot, rest assured, still going to do a lot. But that's largely because Ian's other huge interest is cycling. And he said he went out with a group the other day that he thought he'd easily be able to stick with, and they left him. So he's well aware now that his other passion has slipped because he's been so busy spending seat time in racing cars. So he's going to concentrate on that. But he is still doing, I think, a chunk of racing out here in the Middle East over what will be our winter back home.
British GT champion after many, many years of trying, and with the help of Ram Racing and Callum McLeod and Jules Gounon. There, looking down the pit lane, is number 33, the rebuilt Ferrari. Big accident yesterday. The car that comes out of the Kessel Racing stable of David Fuminelli, Axel Jeffries, the Zimbabwean driver, Giorgio Roda, and Murat Chuharoglu. And it was him that battered the car yesterday. 88 is the Garage 59 McLaren. Alan, hello.
Straight out of the car, and Maro Engel, you left with 4 minutes to go with some determination.
Yeah, traffic was crazy. Obviously, that wasn't the game plan. The game plan was to get a clear first and second lap and put a good lap in. But everything was good on the out lap, and then as I came through turn 3, suddenly there was 6 cars that just exited the pits, and from there on it was just traffic, and then red flag. So yeah, we had some work to do at the end there.
Let me tell you something that I saw in the pit lane while you were in the car. I saw one of the mechanics just resting his eyes while the cars were out on circuit. He looked incredibly tired. The guys have worked so hard.
Yeah, I mean, we owe everything to them. We owe the fact that we're even driving to them. They worked the whole night to put the car back together, and what a job they did. You know, I mean, it was bang on the moment we left pit lane this morning. Without a single minute of sleep. So we're just lucky we have such an amazing team here, and obviously I'm going to try and put that car as high up as possible for them.
Thank you for talking to us, Maro. Maro Engel down here in pit lane.
Alan, thank you very much indeed. Maro Engel then the fastest thus far. And you, if you haven't heard him before, so what I mean about the Aussie twang. We're talking, obviously, in this event about the pro cars, of which there is a fantastic number. There is the Pro-Am battle. Mark's touched on that. In January, the organisers of this event, Driving Force Events, have the Pro-Am 1000, again, in the Middle East, because in Bahrain there will be the Pro-Am 1000 on the 28th of January. And there are exciting plans as well for the future of this event. They're going to be announced in the week, so stay tuned. But the event with a fantastic platform on which to build, and it'll be another IGTC next year. So not just the race, but the whole event here. 12 months on, it's going to get bigger and better. Yeah,
it was very positive, wasn't it, the news that was being relayed to us earlier on about, you know, what this event is going to look like in 12 months' time, and as you alluded to, that's going to be announced this next week coming. And also with that new event at Bahrain, which is the Pro-Am 1000 taking place on the 28th of January, so it allows the spirit of the Gulf 12 Hours to spread, I suppose you could say, with that 1,000-kilometre 6-hour race into the night at again a very similar facility to this, you know, a Formula 1 racetrack as well. Only Pro-Am lineups allowed in that though as well, so you're guaranteed an Am to be on the top step of the podium. So it does something different again, doesn't it? As this event has now evolved and has moved on to where it is this year and for next year, it allows again the amateur drivers still to have plenty of seat time in it, and also for a lot of the teams as well, it means that, you know, they can leave the cars here. They don't have to ship them back to whatever part of the world they're from. Some of them will leave them here, and they can get involved with that as well. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
For the teams, life gets ever busier, doesn't it? Because there's barely no close season at all. Right, everybody is on their toes, ready for Q2, which is half a minute away from the green flag being shown. There you can see the 2Cs Mercedes of James Cottingham, of Aaron Walker, who came into British GT at the end of the season, and Lewis Williamson, who's not only been racing British GT, but title winner in class in Lamborghini Super Trofeo this year.
That's another car that had a bit of strife yesterday. So that was a car which lost track time. That was a mechanical issue with the car where they damaged the bell housing on the car, wasn't it, that was damaged. So it lost a chunk of running yesterday, which means that they've sort of had to change their programme for today. But at least they did manage to get the car back out towards the end of yesterday. Very late on, wasn't it, in the final free practice session? But it's not fully gone to plan for them.
Yeah, didn't they have to change the engine in the end?
I think they dropped the engine out in the end and changed the engine. Yeah.
So Q2 is go. Another car that had dramas yesterday. We've seen it in strife in this session. 93, the Sky Livery Garage 59 McLaren, that had a turbo pipe problem. Right, out they all pour. And if you're at the head of the queue, then you've got good track position. Number 26 Audi, one of the two Santalot cars, 26, which is to be hustled along this weekend by Simon Gachet, Gilles Magnus, and the incredibly tall Lucas Legeret. And that car out first and absolutely on a mission to try and get away from anybody else. It is Lucas Legeret at the wheel of it. Gilles Magnus drove in Q1. There is the current fastest car, so 98 Mercedes ready to go.
We'll have to wait and see as to whether it's going to be, I would imagine for this one, Maxi Gott's behind the wheel, put Lucas Auer late on.
I was just thinking about
it's difficult with that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's not. No.
It's Lucas Auer.
Yes.
Yeah, right, okay.
I was heading towards, I would think possibly Gertz for the end, but you're right, there's not that much to choose. And I'm guessing, Alan, that as far as the sister car is concerned, Daniel Juncadella.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And so they'll keep Jules Gounon for Q3. Jules, who's been an absolute star in pretty much anything, but for those people that went to Alton Park at Easter in British GT terms and saw him fighting there, he was just an absolute hero. And everything he said about Alton Park, where he'd never raced before, I mean, there just couldn't have been a better ambassador for the place.
You couldn't take the smile off his face all weekend, could you, Jules Gounon? Yeah, absolutely loved it.
They need a corner at Alton now, called Gounon's,
the new PR manager for Alton Park, almost in the UK. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, Jonathan Palmer couldn't have asked for a better ambassador for it, and boy, did he race. So he's to come in Q3. So our Juncadella, and we haven't yet had 71 Ferrari out, so it was Antonio Fuoco. I would suspect it'll be James Collado and keep Alessandro Pierguidi for the end, but we'll see whether I'm right. Number 11, the Kessel Ferrari, yet to go. So there's a sort of mass exodus of the majority, but then 3 or 4 stragglers.
And what they'll be hoping is, of course, those that were part of that mass exodus, that they don't end up getting snaffled up in traffic, as we just heard from Mauralengo with these other cars that are just relying or just allowing the track to settle down slightly before they make their way out onto circuit. It looks as though Team Grouper have put both of their Mercedes out together. So it is Daniel Juncadella that is being chased around the circuit by Lucas Auer at this stage. And then it's the number 75 that's just behind them as well, isn't it? Which is the Synergy won by SPS, Martin Conrad-driven Mercedes. So a trio of Mercs.
It's quite clever that they've put them both out together, because I think the 89 car is 1 lap ahead, I think.
Okay, we haven't yet got a lap count for them, but you might well be right, because I think we'd seen 98 sitting in the pit lane for longer, haven't we?
Yes, for 1 lap more.
Yeah, you're right. So, yeah, they've kind of fallen together on the road. So this is where we start to average them out, and absolute best, we haven't got that many to compare against, but absolute best coming now for the likes of Lucas Legeret, and also number 33, the Kessel Ferrari, currently being driven by Axel Jeffries.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the sector times that both Lucas Legeret and Axel Jeffries are putting in, not that much further away, maybe a couple of tenths on what is just their first flying lap adrift from what the cars were doing in the first part of the session. So this is Axel Jeffries now, just weaving his way through the chicane at turns number 6 and turn number 7. The speed begins to build again as he heads down the straight and up towards what will be the reprofiled section, the far more banked section now at turn number 9. And what does the second sector look like for Axel Jeffries? Well, he needs to be sort of mid-45 through that second sector. He's not, he's a 47, so not quite going to happen again, I think, as he's still trying to build that tyre temp.
Very versatile driver, Axel Jeffries. There are lots and lots and lots of different GT cars that he's driven over the years. So now coming to Ferrari, but he's a single-seater driver initially. So the Kessel Ferrari heading up towards the end of the lap. The times for this session we need to have in the sort of mid to low 151s, and a 151.8 from Lucas Leggeret is your benchmark. And that in turn puts the car 6th on average as Axel Jeffries comes then now towards the exit of turn 16, breaks the beam, and the Ferrari then on that lap does a 152.144, which is okay, but it's not mega, and it puts it 8th fastest. And in strife there, number 16 of Stephen Grove, the Australian, has gone a waltzing. So that puts him on the curb on the outside of the racetrack again. Cycles through the restart process and does get it off the curb and out of harm's way.
Yeah, so
ready to pit in.
Shame for him, but at least yet we are able to keep the session under green flag conditions, still with just over 9 minutes of this session to go at this stage. And cars to watch out for, well, all of a sudden we're starting to see James Collado build the pace over the course of this lap at the wheel of number 71 AF Corsa Ferrari. James, who was away at the FIA Awards yesterday, so it was an overnight flight to get here today, jumped in the car in free practice and cracked on. So the number 16 Porsche making its way down the pit lane, but James Collado in the 71 Ferrari on a quick one.
Yeah, James and fellow co-driver here and champion of the year in WEC, Alessandro Pierguidi, and the governor, Amato Ferrari, all on the same overnight flight. I suspect they didn't sit at the back in order to get a bit of shut-eye and then function properly. So James Collado then is now, thanks to his efforts, being shown as the fastest. The timing screen has had a right shuffle, and I wonder whether that is times being removed from Q1 for that yellow flag improvement, and amongst them, therefore, Mauro Engel's time. Now, I'm speculating in saying this, but the timing screen order has had such a shuffle that it makes me think that lap times have disappeared, which is why the aggregated average order is now very different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was wondering as to what had happened with the timing screen, and I absolutely concur with that. I think on this lap, we should see James Collado go to the top of the times in this particular session.
It is Alessandro Pierguidi in the car.
Right.
The team saying because the driver ID is in the wrong place, it is Pierguidi in the car.
Right, in which case Pierguidi has just gone through and done a 1 minute 51.527, which is the fastest time in this session. And when you combine the average time of both drivers now, that does put that car on average times to the top of the timetable. Lucas Leggeret has just gone quickly through at the wheel of the Audi. That car is showing the number 26 Audi second quickest at the moment. We're looking at the 55 Ferrari, which was in the hands of Jamie Stanley for part one of qualifying. It's now in the hands of Alex Cox, who races under the pseudonym, former Ferrari champion, European champion in Copa Shell back in 2020. And that car is on combined times at the moment, lining up second in GT3 AM, albeit 28th overall.
So the shuffling of the order continues now with Danny Juncadella shown as being at the top of the times with 2 times to the car. So on average, that is now the fastest by just under a tenth from Alessandro Pierguidi. Lucas Leggeret for Sandslock is third. Alfazar Al-Zubair fourth, ahead of Axel Jeffries and Alessio Rovera. And where in all of this is number 98. So Mauro Engel's efforts earlier on, well, his 151.5 does stand actually for the moment. So it's a slow lap by hour, I think, that's just dropped them down the order, because a 51.5 still quicker than 89. So I think, yeah, the lap time is there still. It's just that lots of others have gone quicker earlier in Q2.
And because it's so tight, of course, you're dropping a lot further than you would expect. Jonathan Hui going well at the wheel of the Sky Tempesta Racing McLaren, looking to try and hoik his way up through the order. In the pit lane remains the number 92 GT Cup Porsche, which largely the Centro Porsche Ticino car had a good chunk of pace throughout the free practice sessions. It at the moment is showing as being the slowest of the 34 cars that have circulated, I think.
Penultimate, yeah, but the team manager is being summoned to the race control office as well. Axel Jeffries has just pitted as now 71. Alessandro Pierguidi accelerates towards the end of another lap. Now, how's he doing in terms of sector times here? The answer is down in the first, so it's not yet looking to be an improver.
No, down in the first by about a tenth of a second, I would say, from where he ought to have been largely, so he might be able to scoop that up later over the course of the lap.
But Pierguidi is the quickest in Q2 from Danny Junqueira, and Lucas Auer is third in Q2 at the moment as the Ferrari then wriggles its way through 6 and 7 out of the chicane. He's actually done quite a good job here, has he not, with buying clear track space for the moment. Trying to see who else is up the road ahead. There are slower cars further up the road, but they're not going to be an immediate problem then for Pierre Guidi. He will catch the Magnussen-Kvarma Ferrari first up, goes through the hairpin, but for all of this, Pierre Guidi down in the first sector, but a personal best in the second.
Yeah, so just maybe a tenth down in the first sector, but certainly quicker than he's previously gone through the second sector. Now from the far more traditional part of the circuit into almost the street section of the circuit, where the cars run so close to the barriers, particularly through this corner here. Coming out of this corner, we saw the cars inching up to the barriers, almost the wing mirror touching the barriers there as he came out of turn number 14, up to turn 15, where we've seen a couple of cars have problems. No such problems so for Alessandro Pierre Guidi through turn number 16. What is the time going to look like? He was quicker than he's previously gone through the first sector. And as he goes over the start-finish line, that is the quickest time of the session so far from Alessandro Pierre Guidi, a 1 minute 51.4, which means that Ferrari now combined times is third, but only just.
Yeah, doesn't improve, does it? Stays third, because now to the top has gone Lucas Auer, 1:51.532 last time. So Lucas Auer is then, on average, the fastest. His lap, a thousandth of a second slower than Danny Junqueira, and 0.132 of a second slower than Alessandro Pierre Guidi. Out of the Sarokin Racing, Ferrari gets Stéphane Cox. Dad very proud. So that number 52 Ferrari presses on. That is Gabriele Lancieri in the wheel, and on average the car is 27th, and in the session it's 27th as well in Q2.
Into the pit lane is Axel Sartiger at the wheel of the number 91 Baron Motorsport Ferrari. So that car is one of the cars that runs in the AM category at the moment, and is currently third in qualifying on average times in GT3 AM. That will put it 23rd overall over the course of this session. 3 minutes still remaining, and I would say car to watch out for on this lap to see what it might be able to do. The number 50 Ferrari is setting green sectors now. They, of course, a Francorchamps Motorsport car, quicker than it's previously gone through both first and second sectors, and that car at the moment
fifth on average with Alessio
Rivera
at the wheel. Yeah, right. Lucas Auer is still pressing on, but down in sector 1 and down in sector 2 as well, so there's not going to be any improvement on this lap, I don't think. I would imagine Auer probably ought to bail at the end of this, and then they can get set for Q3.
Alessio Rivera did improve in the end, improved with a 1 minute 51.963, but it still keeps that Ferrari fifth on average times.
Yeah, fascinating fact 37, just to show you how evenly matched not just cars but drivers are. Lucas Auer and Mauro Engel in number 98, identical lap times to the thousandth. So they have both done in separate sessions 1:51.532. Engel did it in Q1, Auer does exactly the same time in Q2. That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, we talk about balance of performance of cars, balance of performance of drivers there, absolutely bang on.
So identical times for both Auer and Engel, and Lucas Auer does, as I was suggesting he might, bail. That's him done. They can now start to get the third driver of the car good to go, Maxi Goetz, who now has the pressure that he's got to match the lap time of the other two, absolutely to the thousand.
The team might be feeling slightly jaded after what went on yesterday, but they must also be at the same time absolutely elated with the response that's come out of their drivers.
But I mean, that's one of these long distance race stories, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, there's the hardship, then there's this great turnaround in the fortunes. Right then, we are almost at the end. We've got just over a minute. So Lucas Auer and Mauro Engel currently top, from Raffaele Marcello and Danny Junqueira second, and then Alessandro Pierre Guidi and Antonio Fuoco third. Told you the Ferraris would be there or thereabouts, and 71 looking racy. Getting more lap times disallowed. Lucas Legere has just lost a lap. The Audis are creeping into the mix, aren't they, as well? Fourth and fifth now, the Attempto and Santilot cars. Dennis Marshall ahead of Patrick Niederhauser, very rapid Swiss driver. Dennis Marshall is somebody else that's just got better and better and better over the years in GT3 racing. Came out of the one-make Volkswagen Audi scene in Germany and comes into the pit lane. And there is Eduardo Cosseteng, former British Formula 4 Championship racer, who hops out of the Century BMW. Somebody switching disciplines from single-seaters to GT cars for the first time. But there aren't going to be many on the track, I don't think, taking the checkered flag, because increasingly the pit lane beckons.
Yeah, it's more and more and more all filing their way into the pit lane. We've got at least a dozen of the cars in the pit lane at the moment, and more just continually popping their way in now and not continuing with it. So Alessio Rivero is still out there at this stage. Brendan Aribe is still out there at the wheel of the number 7 Inception McLaren. But I think largely everybody has decided that that's it, and checkered flag goes out now. We do get one taker.
Car,
it's the 51, it's the 2C's number 51, isn't it, that goes to take the checkered flag, which is Aaron Walker. But other than that, there aren't many others that I think have taken the checkered flag as yet. Issa Al Khalifa, I think, has taken the checkered flag. Jan Magnussen, who is out there now, having also taken the checkered flag. Good to see Jan racing in the Gulf 12 Hours. We've not seen him before with number 43 Ferrari. That car is 9th in its class at the moment, running in GT3 Pro. He'll be handing it over to Sun, won't he, Kevin, for part 3.
Issa Al Khalifa, that you were just talking about, number 1 Mercedes crossing the line, has then lost his lap time, so he stayed out and had it taken off him for track limit offences. Kevin Magnussen, K-Mag, about to have his first GT3 race, so he's driven at Le Mans in LMP2 machinery, but this will be a first GT3 race. And he towers over his dad. I mean, Kevin's not the tallest of people, but he dwarfs Jan. Right, so we will await Q3, but so far, although you can see there the order of Q2, Alessandro Guidi the fastest, and second quickest in that session, Daniel Juncadella, and third in the session, Lucas Auer. On average, it is the Auer Angle Mercedes from Juncadella, Marciello, and Pierre Guidi, and Fuoco third fastest. And we've now got, I understand, spots of rain falling. Now, that wasn't in the game plan.
That was not in the game plan. No, we did see rain in the Middle East just a couple of weekends ago, where Jeddah really had a storm come through. But yes, that was not in the game plan. But as Alan Hyde alluded to, it was expected by some of the teams.
Yes, indeed. How many sets of wets Pirelli have brought remains to be seen. But that is your actual rain. That's your proper British rain, that is, that you've brought from Lincoln. So
it's actually not proper British rain.
Oh, is it not?
It is just single plops of rain.
Okay.
So they're actually quite nice. They're quite warm, but they are certainly plops of rain.
Okay. Plops is a technical term, is it?
Yes, it is, and we have quite a warm surface, so the plops of rain dry out quite quickly. So at the moment, it's nothing to worry about. But
right.
But worry we shall.
Okay, Alan, as ever, we are captivated by your knowledge. You are truly top of the plops.
Well, thank you so much. Very good.
Don't call us.
No, that was exceptional.
Thank you. Right, Lucas Auer, you probably heard me saying, absolutely identical time to that of Mauro Engel. So that's a pretty heroic effort by Lucas. And,
it is, and
making amends.
Mauro was just going over to the pit wall and smiling away. He still is. Now, I can't see where Lucas Auer is, but if I get a chance to have a chat to him, I will.
Okay, good man.
So what can Maxi Goetz do then when he jumps?
Well, like I said earlier, the pressure's on. He's got to either match it or go a thousandth quicker.
Well, even the lap time there also that Daniel Juncadella put in was 1/1000th of a second quicker than we've seen from the sister car as well. So, yeah, of the 4 drivers in that team so far, 3 of them have been within 1/1000th of a second of each other.
Yeah, and I've never used the sentence Raffaele Marciello is the slowest before, but of the 4 times, his is the slowest. So it's a funny world, isn't it? It rains in the Middle East, and Raffaele Marciello is slower out of those 4 times. Right, back to the plot. The Q3 coming up. Don't forget we've got 4 parts of qualifying, so we are still only halfway through. The grid has yet to be anywhere near sorted out.
I've got Lucas, and he's smiling. To get an equal time with your teammate to the 1000th of a second is pretty rare, you know.
Yes, agree. The car is really good. Mauro did an amazing job, and after our crash yesterday, we had a good comeback. My qualifying wasn't so clean, I have to say, but we are still in a good position.
And you can see we've got little raindrops now.
It's pretty crazy. I thought maybe I still have some headache from yesterday, but apparently it's really raining a bit.
You mentioned yesterday that wasn't a great start to the weekend. You're okay, are you?
Yes, but it was a heavy one, and big thanks to the team. They did an amazing job. They slept 0 minutes tonight.
I know, I was saying to Mauro Engel after he got out the car that one of the members of the team I watched standing up and closing his eyes because he's so tired.
Yeah, so they are the real heroes. I don't know how they did it, but we managed, and we did it even in style because the car is fast.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for talking to us, Lucas.
Cheers.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed. Lucas Hour down in the garage.
And you know what they say, Alan? Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
You are on fire today.
In fairness, it's an old favourite, but thank you. So he's done it, hasn't he? I mean, that is the best way possible to repay the faith in the team and all that hard work, but we're not quite done yet.
No, we mentioned that when we saw the fantastic lap put in by Mauro Engel, that was a way to repay the team. But yeah, now that two have done it, absolutely, be really interesting to see as to how close Maxi Goertz can get to that. Can he slightly eclipse it as well, as you alluded to, when you consider that the slowest time that's been put in so far from both of the cars in the Mercedes-AMG Team Group Up has been put in by Raffaele Marciello. Then yeah, that's an unusual thing to say. But at the moment, on average times, it's a Mercedes 1-2. It's the number 71 AF Corsa Ferrari that's third on average times. The leading Audi, which is the Team Tresor car, the number 66 car, is fourth. The first of the Team Santalot cars on average times is fifth. And then we go back to Ferrari again for sixth, and it's the number 50 Ferrari at this stage. The leading Pro-Am car on combined times at the moment is the number 33 Kessel Racing Ferrari. So again, that's another car that was in strife yesterday. Car was so badly damaged they couldn't repair it, so it is a brand new chassis, brand new car that they've brought in. That is the quickest Pro-Am car at the moment. So again, great way to repay the team, and it is another Ferrari, the number 61 Ferrari, that is the leading GT3 AM car at this stage. That picks out the class leaders there. In terms of the Cup cars at this stage, well, it is the number 92 Century Porsche Ticino car that is fastest of the four Cup class cars that we've got out. That's a number 92 car. So, yeah, interesting to see how it's going to pan out. This is the last of the sessions, David, for those teams that have got three drivers to try and qualify. So does that mean for Q4 we see fewer cars out?
Yes, yes.
Which means there's more track space, which means it's easier to get the quick time in without the traffic.
Indeed so. And this session has now been declared wet because of these spots of rain falling, so it puts the onus on the teams now to decide what they want to do about tyres. But I would think that if you get the warmth into them, they'll still be able to cut through anything that falls. Alan?
No one will put on a set of wet tyres.
No,
and
sure.
In fact, the little plops of rain that were noticeable on the turquoise coloured pit lane, they've now dried out, gone.
Okay.
So,
right.
yeah, nothing to worry about.
Right, so
nothing to see here.
No, move along. So we're almost good to go, ready for this third part of qualifying. Yeah, it's when, just going back to your point, Mark, it's when for Q4 really the pros in a Pro-Am car come into their own.
Yeah. They've got the clear track, yeah.
Bit of clearer track space, and on goes the list. Now, is there any more rain on the way? What do we think?
I'm just about to boot up a different app. I was just looking at ambient temperature out there at the moment. It's showing us 24 degrees, so it's not surprising that any rain that has fallen has largely evaporated rather quickly. But in terms of what's due to come in on the radar, well, at the moment, if I just press the play button there, let's have a look at what the... It's not looking to... No, there's still a few black clouds on their way, so we'll have to wait and see. It's certainly very cloudy for the next 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a small confession point. I was going to say during Q...
Alan, you're very crackly and breaky-uppy wherever you're stood, I'm afraid to say. No, for the moment, Alan is in a dark place, so to speak, because the signal is being strangled, but unless he's being rained on, he will get back to us.
The chances of rain improving. So at the moment it was saying a 40% chance of rain, but of course we did have, as our roving weather reporter suggested, plops, and it remains at 40% until the next hour or so. After that it gets better, but of course qualifying's done and dusted by then, so I think it could blow in. It may not, but really simply don't know. Alan, are you there? No, haven't got him still.
No. At Garage 59, they're also looking at weather apps, possibly, or Instagram, or TikTok, you name it. Ready to go. Hello.
I'm so sorry, I used the wrong microphone. I've been told quite specifically which colour to use, and I used the wrong one. All I was going to say was during Q2, it was quite interesting, because I was going to say a ridiculous comment during Q2. I was going to say it's come over extremely dark now. The problem is that there are floodlights around the circuit, so you are lulled into thinking it's still daytime. Of course, it's not. It's the dark of night now, so I can't tell if there's clouds. I'm afraid it's dark everywhere.
That was Alan Hyde who died today. Right, green flag. Thanks, Al. Cars are making their way out on track, headed by Giorgio Roda, then Peter Cox, and Alex Fontana is also in that group going onto the circuit early. So, session underway, third part of qualifying, and this really, for the pointy end, is where we're going to get the grid, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. For the teams that are running in the pro category, they're all here with just the 3 drivers, so their averages will be done and dusted after this one, and therefore that will largely work out what that front end, maybe the first 3-4 rows of the grid might look like. After that, then of course we get into the pro-am categories, some of which have 4 drivers, so they'll also have an additional qualification aspect again, so it means that their average will be based on 4 drivers rather than just on 3. So Giorgio Roda was first out of pit lane at the wheel of the number 33 Kessel Racing Ferrari. That is at the car at the moment that is looking to try and secure pole in Pro-Am.
We also have a car to watch. I would offer you number 25, the blue Santaloc Audi, which is going to have GT3 first-timer Owen Bastard behind the wheel. He is the European and the French GT4 champion. He is very, very rapid in GT4 machinery, steps up to GT3, and will be a man to watch, no doubt about it. Now, I'm intrigued to see if they put him in for this third part of qualifying.
And Santaloc have got a good history of doing that, haven't they? Bringing some of the younger drivers from some of their junior formula that they run, because he's been running with Santaloc in French GT this year, up into the senior team and seeing how he might be able to get on. Already there has been a spin. That is the number 96 Cup car, I think.
That's David Fairbrother, isn't it?
David Fairbrother, yeah.
Who we were learning earlier has lucky stripy pants. I refer you at this point to my pants correspondent in the pit lane who has elicited this information. But they're not as lucky for David Fairbrother as we first were led to believe, because he's had a spin. There, going through, is Mikael Grenier.
Was there a skid mark?
I was waiting for it, but yes. I don't think it was a Code Brown moment, was it? So he probably got away with that for now. Mikael Grenier takes over the Ian Logie and Morgan Tilbrook Mercedes. 88 is about to go. The Garage 59 McLaren. Marvin Kirchhofer. This will be worth watching, I tell you. If Marvin's behind the wheel of it and he's able to get track space, then stand back. And there is the family Mercedes of the Gosners. David Gosner at the wheel of the MP Racing Mercedes, a car that regularly competes in Creventic events, but good to have the 4-driver family crew of dad, 2 daughters and son on the grid for the Gulf 12 Hours.
Proper family team, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you got David is the father. I think Manuela is the elder of the 2 daughters. Carina is, I think, a year younger, and David is the son who is the youngest of the 3.
Yeah. Thomas Gosner is dad, yeah. And David Gosner then does the driving duties in this, and we are awaiting then the first proper lap time out of the session, out of Q3. So Maxi Goetz, Jules Gounon, now James Collado is the top 3 on average. Number 25, Christopher Hauser's efforts from Q1, no investigation necessary. So that blocking that was looked at, the stewards have said, nope, nothing to see here. So that keeps that car 5th on average, and Owen Bastard now behind the wheel of it, chasing after Kelvin van der Linde. And on average, he has got to find just over 0.2 of a second.
So down in towards the braking area for turn number 9 goes the number 91 Ferrari of Matas Vibok, being run by Team Baron. That's the car that's heading into this session lies 3rd overall in the GT3 AM category. So hard work already having been done, so he ought to be lapping, if allegedly he's the quicker of the 3 drivers that's dropping into this final part of the qualifying session. He needs to be 1 minute 54 and a half at very worst, really. that would then eclipse the lap times of the previous two drivers that have taken to the wheel of that one. Nicholas Nielsen with work to do as wheel at the wheel of the number 50 Ferrari. That's a car that at the moment is 4th overall, has just dropped to 5th overall on combined times as some of the quicker times come in.
And the best in the session is Ben Barnicoat, who has done a 1:51.587 then, which would be good enough to be in the mix for the front row, pretty much. Good effort by Ben. So he is there or thereabouts. On the average, it puts the Inception Racing McLaren 9th. You're looking at Nicholas Nielsen then hustling on, and he has done 2 personal bests.
It also puts the Inception Racing McLaren now to the top of the Pro-Am times as well, doesn't it?
So where is Nicholas Nielsen going to drop in? He's got traffic ahead of him, but if he can get the lap time in unaffected by the number 69 Porsche, then there should be an improvement for him. Yep, 5th in the session on a 1:51.7, and that puts the car 5th on average.
Yeah, James. Still showing James Collado behind the wheel. So I'm guessing it is James Collado,
yes,
this time, since Alessandro Guidi was incorrectly identified on the previous one. And to the top of the times, a 1:51.2 comes in from Jules Gounon that time round. So all of a sudden, we see on combined times the number 89 Mercedes briefly go to the top of the pile, but Maxi Goetz puts his lap time in, and a split second later, the order is reversed. The number 98 Mercedes goes back to the top of the times on average times, but there's only 2/100ths of a second separating the two Mercedes for the average time at the moment for pole.
And Goetz quicker than his 2 co-drivers. A 1:51.3 plays 1:51.5, so he's not as quick as Gounon, but he's 2/10ths quicker than his co-drivers, and then on the average that goes back to the top by 0.160 of a second then. So a good effort this being put in by Maxi Goetz. It's going to be a really fascinating race between those 2 cars, isn't it? Because I know one is looking to win a championship, but the other just wants to win a race.
And we've just seen the number 66 Team Audi Sport 3 car of Kelvin van der Linde set a quick time, and he now has come and brought that car up to 3rd overall on average times, with a 1:51.5 being his time, but it means the car's average is now 1:51.7. So AF Corsa and James Collado now have got a bit of work to do to try and get themselves back up to 3rd position potentially on the grid.
So on the average now, the gap between the top 2 is 23 thousandths of a second. So Jules Gounon doesn't have to find a great deal. As you look there at Maxi Goetz being held up a little bit in traffic, the Ferrari gets out of the way, Goetz goes through, but that will have cost a fraction of time on this lap. Just under 8 minutes to go then as we nudge towards halfway in Q3.
Yeah, I don't think Jules Gounon's going to find it on this particular lap, because he's down in Sector 1 and down in Sector 2, so he's got a bit more to try and find through Sector 3. He works his way up towards conclusion of the lap, but we'll get Maxi Goetz over the start-finish line prior to that. He's just turning his way in towards turn number 16 now, and his sector time suggesting there could be an improvement here as he fires his way over the start-finish line and comes over the timing line now. No, slightly slower, lost it through the final sector.
Yeah, it was the traffic, wasn't it, that got in the way of Maxi Goetz, but he's still on provisional pole position then. We've got number 75 Mercedes of Kenny Harble losing lap times. We've also now got Maxi Goetz losing a lap. So track limit in turn 4, so towards the start of the lap time disappears, but it's enough to keep him at the top.
So 7 minutes still remaining. Who's on a quick lap at the moment? Well, Jules Gounon is quicker than he's previously gone through the first sector. Only needs to find that 23 thousandths of a second. Well, he's found a bit of it through the first sector. In fact, he's found 43 thousandths of the 23 he needs through the first sector alone. So all Jules Gounon now needs to do is just stick with what he's done through Sector 2 and Sector 3 in the past, and potentially he might just do enough.
The number 44 Porsche with Klaus Bachler at the wheel of it here, on the limit. It's a Pro-Am car, so Klaus gets his moment to shine now. We know how quick he is. A great Porsche driver is Klaus Bachler, but it won't be one to threaten for overall honours because of it being in Pro-Am. But he will be quick, make no mistake about that.
He's got a bit of traffic around him, and I don't think that particularly come into play because they look fairly equally spread as they come down in towards the braking area. So you see the nose dip on the beautiful, is it purple, is it pink? It's quite dark purple under this light, but when you look at it in the daylight, it looks a lot lighter, doesn't it, that purple
looks
car?
Good, doesn't it?
It does. It look, as I said earlier on, you know, the cars come alive at night. They look different, don't they, under the floodlights than they do in normal daylight. We should see Maxi Goetz back over the start-finish line shortly, but the lap time didn't come together for him, so we'll stick with Klaus Bachler and see what he's doing at the wheel of the number 44 car. The answer is slightly slower through the first sector and the second sector than he's previously been, so it doesn't look as though he's going to improve the time of the number 44 Porsche, which currently lines up 15th overall and 5th in Pro-Am.
But it's a very different feel, isn't it, now to the racetrack? As we've been saying, it's going dark. I don't think the rain really is anything to worry about anymore, but the light has changed, and everything, and it's the same in any motorsport under floodlights, whether it's on a circuit like this or an oval, everything feels that bit more enclosed now. Everything is focused purely on the track. You don't worry about the runoff areas or what's outside the racetrack itself. Everything is just concentrated now on that strip of tarmac.
I think the amazing thing is with endurance racing, it always feels different at night. I think from a spectating perspective, it looks very different. From a driving perspective, I think it heightens the senses, doesn't it, as well? You're focused ever more. Looks as though things are done and dusted in this session for the number 33 Ferrari. So Giorgio Roda is done. That is the car that at the moment is third quickest on average times in the Pro-Am category, 10th quickest overall, being readied for potentially the final qualifying session. Because that is one of the cars that has got 4 drivers to try and get through. So it'll be David Fuminelli, won't it? Who is going to be interesting to watch, I think, in this final session for him.
Yeah, he was quick here in January, wasn't he, in the Valentino Rossi Ferrari. Kelvin van der Linde quicker last time, but staying third on the average, but he's still a 10th shy of Gounon. That's the Magnussen Ferrari. Kevin Magnussen at the wheel of it. 8th in Q3 and 15th on the average. 15th on the grid order.
And what he'll also be looking at is Dad's time, second quicker than Dad. So it was Jan was a woman at 52.7. It's a woman at 51.7 that Kevin's managed to put in. So almost a second between the pair of them. We've got 3.5 minutes to go. Up towards turn 1 goes the number 69 Herbert Racing Porsche in the hands of Robert Renauer. That car is 10th overall in Pro-Am, 14th quickest as things currently stand. And for Robert Renauer, see whether he can maybe just squeeze a little bit more out of that as well. We've seen him racing in the Gulf 12 but not for quite some time, I don't think, Robert Renauer. The best part of maybe 5-6 years ago was the last time that we saw him. His twin brother's out racing, but all in the same car, isn't he?
Yes, they split the cars apart. Yes, that's right. One in each of the Herbert Motorsport cars, their team. Sorry, I was getting slightly worried about Alex Arca, number 99 Audi, who's only 30th out of the 34 at the moment. So that's a car that needs to get a wriggle on. And our timing screen has just done something more bizarre by putting everything now in numerical order rather than classification order. So that's going to make life complicated for a moment. Bear with.
Robert Renauer almost right in towards the coattails there of David Fairbrother. That looked slightly marginal when they got into the break there. David Fairbrother now sees him coming, moves out of harm's way, but that will have, without question, compromised the lap for Robert Renauer.
It was fascinating watching trackside this morning, seeing how different the GT3 spec compared to a Cup spec Porsche they are. You know, they both look like proper bits of racing kit, which they are, but you know, there aren't many things that can make a Cup class Porsche look pedestrian.
No.
A GT3 car stood next to it virtually can. And those 911 GT Cups, very, very rapid indeed. Having their own inter-Nissan battle. Right, there is the next one in the pit lane. And what are we off? 1 minute and 3/4 now from the checkered flag. Oddly, improvements towards the end of this, not as prevalent as they were in the earlier 2 segments.
No, I think that probably the largest improvement that we picked up on was the fact that we've had that change for first place in Pro-Am in reality, haven't we? We had a little bit of shuffling above those, but largely it was, the Inception Racing number 7 McLaren managing to pip the 33 Kessel Racing Ferrari to potentially GT3 Pro-Am pole at this stage, as they were fighting over 9th and 10th position on an average times. There's less than a 10th of a second between those 2 cars now.
So they're getting out of the way is the Mercedes 89. Lets the Porsche go through. So the Mercedes heading for the pits because it's on an in-lap. No point in getting in the way. The Porsche has just had its lap taken off it anyway for going wide at turn 3, and also so has Chris Frog at number 93 McLaren. So again, if the teams are on their toes, they'll see the information, they'll relay to the driver, you can abort this lap because it's not going to count, and then they can save the rubber and go again. But equally, now you need to get to the timing line before the clock hits 0. So for some, you might still have to push, even if this lap isn't going to count for anything. You've got to get through to have another go.
Yeah, and there's only, what, 25 seconds in which to do that now, so should be good to go.
Alex, sorry, I was going to say Alex Arca has just lost another lap time. So is Jules Gounon, in fact, here. But Alex Arca, who I think was in strife with track limits and things back in January, that car is still only 30th out of the 34.
Trying to keep an eye on what was going on with James Collado, who looked as though he was starting to build up a quick lap, but aborted it, I think, in the end. And anybody else that's on a quick lap, it will be their last one as well, because checkered flag is now out, which means that into the pit lane comes Jules Gounon. So the number 89 Mercedes going to have to settle for second quickest at this stage. But remember, this is only Q3 of what is, for some cars, a 4-part qualifying session. So any of the cars now with 3 drivers are done and dusted for the day. Next time they'll be back on track will be on the formation lap, or the out lap, ahead of our 11th running of the Gulf 12 Hours. You were talking about also, you know, the format's changed now that we're part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, David, that the format's changed from being 2 6-hour races in reality, with a 2-hour gap between in between the two, where the cars aren't in parc fermé conditions, so the teams can work on them, but the result comes from both parts of the race added together. Now it's a single 12-hour race. Potential for more retirements, largely because the teams don't have that 2-hour gap to re-prep the cars.
No, but I think that's more for the true AM teams or the Cup teams. You know, when the event started and entries were smaller, that break was there to try and give people repair time, if you like. Yeah. So you've got a problem, you can repair and still come back out. But these top teams run at such a good level. You know, they do 24-hour races. Not only Spa, but they'll go off and do other 24-hour events like Nürburgring in some cases. You know, they should be able to get the cars through 12 hours. I think it's going to make for a very different feel to the race, and in the positive, personally.
Yeah, it's that subtly different dynamic that this will bring, and you can't really compare this 12-hour race, the last round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, for those teams that are in it, compared to what the first round was, Bathurst. Entirely different prospect.
And equally, you know, one of the downsides to the 6-hour format was that because at the end of the first 6 hours you would re-grid and all the gaps disappeared, there was no incentive for people to push on in that final section of the first part, because it didn't matter whether you were a second behind or a minute, because then you carried on the grid. You could gain places just off the line. So this makes it more of a natural race for sure.
So cars pitting their way into the pit lane. So at the moment it is the AMG, or Mercedes AMG team Gruppe number 98 car that is fastest of all on combined times. Maro Engel, Lucas Auer and Maxi Goertz having done the hard work. Maxi Goertz in the end just managing to go about 0.2 of a second quicker than his teammates managed to do. Second quickest is the sister car to it as well, so the number 89 car, which again has got some very strong driver pairing with the likes of Raffaele Marciello, Daniel Juncadella and Jules Gounon. And third quickest is the leading Audi, so that's the number 66 Audi. Fourth quickest is Ferrari, fifth quickest another Ferrari, sixth quickest is back to Mercedes, the number 77 car, and then it is Audi in 7th and 8th place, McLaren in 9th, and Ferrari completing the top 10. So again, all of the manufacturers largely represented in there. As you alluded to earlier, shame we don't have a pro class McLaren. We've got them in Pro-Am. Shame we don't have a pro class Porsche as well.
Yeah, because we had 1 or 2 out earlier on in the season, like at Spa, for example, the GPX car, but it didn't finish and therefore didn't score well, and therefore, you know, it can't win the championship. There's no incentive to be here. So again, it's also an element of last round syndrome, that if you can't win and there's no particular point
for those in Intercontinental GT Challenge.
Whereas others just want to come and do the race for what it is and have the track time and race at a great venue. So it ticks different boxes for different people, this event, for sure.
We've been enjoying much celebration down in the Gruppe M garage, and drivers all congratulating each other. They race pretty much as one. They share in the garage together. Let me see if I can get a quick word with Raffaele Marciello, because I didn't get a chance right at the start of the session. Thoughts on your qualifying section?
I mean, it's okay. I mean, you know, quality doesn't matter so much in endurance. It was tricky with traffic, so it was good to have a lap. And I mean, at 10 when you start, let's say, top 10 for endurance, then it's fine. I mean, for sure it's better to start in front. So I mean, for sure it's good, but it doesn't matter anything yet.
Nice celebrations because the team have been working hard.
Yeah, I mean, it was not on my car actually, but for sure it's a nice reward for the team. But I mean, as I said, means nothing because we don't have any trophy today, so we'll see.
So the last time I enjoyed yourself and Maro Engel starting a race was a few weeks ago at Macau. That was quite an opening lap, wasn't it?
I mean, I had a good start, so yeah.
That's the best quote you could possibly have given us. It was so to watch. It was utterly amazing. Have you watched it back?
I mean, for sure. I mean, it was. I mean, you know, in Macau, it's like you have to be in front, and so I said anyway, I have nothing to lose. I have respect with Maro, so even if it was like aggressive, let's say, we had like respect between each other, so it was a good move. But for sure, tomorrow will not be the same because I mean it's 12 hours, so
Slightly different race length as well.
yeah. I mean it's 12 hours, you know, with strategy, with traffic. Tomorrow many stuff will happen, so I mean I think the one that will not take any drive-through for track limits and the car will be in one piece is at 10th, then we'll have a good chance for 10th.
Raffaele, thank you for talking to me about that, and thanks for talking about Macau. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, I had to ask, didn't I? I had to ask.
Absolutely. He is the most laid back of Italians, isn't he?
Isn't he just? He's absolutely wonderful. I was just saying to someone, a friend of mine down here in the pit lane, that of the 6 drivers that are down here in these 2 garages, 89 and 98, they're all so friendly and so nice to talk to and so at the top of their game.
It is great to see, and yes, it is a very good, close-knit community that they have at Mercedes-AMG. Right, one more part of qualifying still to go.
And that will sort out the grid for us then, won't it? So less cars out this time through, so only the cars that have 4 drivers in will be out in this session. So what we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, is it, I make, will be out in this session rather than the 34. So that provides a lot clearer track, a lot more, you could argue, opportunity for these teams to see whether they can shuffle the order, and for certainly those that are in Pro-Am, as you suggested, now the Pro's going to get behind the wheel. That should improve the average time. We might get a bit more of that shuffle.
Possibly so, yes. It's going to be an interesting one, this, for sure. A possibly calmer track, but some good lap times. And, I mean, for all that we're talking here about the level of competition in qualifying, as soon as they get through turn 1 tomorrow morning, and 12 hours are ahead of them, the order's completely different anyway. But, yeah, I mean, you want to be, hopefully, up at the front, away from trouble, that's for sure, on that first couple of corners.
Yeah, because, you know, whilst we're saying it, in reality, with the way the regulations are written and the number of pit stops, the mandatory pit stops that they have to carry out, you know, it's 11 separate sprint races that we're going to be looking at across the 12 hours, but you've still got to approach it with that endurance racing mindset. It's not 11 sprint races, it's also one single 12-hour race. You've got to keep your nose clean. You can't afford to get tangled up in the early stages.
No, and, you know, you made the point with how few safety car periods we had back in January. I know it was a smaller entry, but one of the elements of this circuit as a modern-day Formula One venue with all the access roads and the interlink roads and so forth, you know, it's relatively straightforward to recover an incident, and therefore interruptions should not be that numerous. Well, we are getting the cars, because the fast lane is open, down towards the end of the pit lane, ready to go back out. And Q4, 15 minutes, will be underway very shortly.
Yeah, we've also had some pretty large grids where we have, again, had very few safety car periods. Just looking back through, you know, we're talking about one safety car period here when we were here also for the 2016 iteration of this event. Single safety car period across the 2 6-hour parts. It was exactly the same in 2014 and 2013 in the 2 races that we had, sort of 2012, 2013 championship season. So we've done it before. Most ever safety car periods we've had. 2019, we had 2 in part 1 of the race, but we had 5 in part 2 of the race. So 7 safety car periods over the course of 2019. However, 2013 there were 8. 6 in the first part, 2 in the second.
Okay.
So there's been a mixture. It's either been sort of 6 or 7 or 8 or hardly any. Nothing in between.
Well, watch this space. So the pit lane will go live shortly. At the end of qualifying, depending on whether you are a football fan or not, drivers either head for the Parc Fermé dinner, some of which, an introduction at least, will be shown live from the event, but others are off to their hotel to watch the football. There's a huge English-speaking contingent with a place reserved to go and watch the soccer. But again, the Parc Fermé dinner, as the green flag is now shown at the pit outline, is all part of that social element of the event for good relations with teams, with the event, and more of that to come in January. That Pro-Am 1000 in Bahrain, which interest is building nicely, I think promises to be a really good event, not only because it's somewhere different. I know they've been once, but it's somewhere relatively different for many of the drivers and for the event itself, but also, again, it puts the emphasis on the AM. Build your grid from the back has always been a good adage in GT racing. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah, and plenty of track time for them there, as they get here as well, with all of the testing that was taking place yesterday, with the free practice that's been taking place over the course of today, and of course, albeit short qualifying period, but then a 12-hour race, so plenty of seat time for the amateur drivers to enjoy. But yeah, Bahrain is something subtly different for them. So starting to work their way out onto circuit now. We see the 11 cars that should be taking part in this session. So the number 7 Inception Racing Attempto prepared McLaren making its way out onto track, ready to try and knock up another lap. The number 61 Ferrari is out in the hands of Jean-Claude Sarda. We've got the number 91 Baron Ferrari out, Daniele Diamato. Giorgio Senegiotti is out at the wheel of the 52 that we're looking at. Stefano Constantini will jump on board the number 55 Ferrari, and Manuela Gosner will be on board the number 58 car as well. So that's just a few that are out there. As for the Cup cars, well, Marco Casera will jump on board the 49 Porsche that we were looking at briefly, and Stephen Licorice, who's been a podium finisher and a winner here before in the Cup class, is on board the number 96 Porsche.
Dubai resident, but busy UK racer. Alan is enjoying himself in the pit lane by the sound of it. You can hear him giggling. You did? You were allowed to giggle?
No, I'm sorry.
What did you see?
No, I was to a famous motorsport phone.
Oh, him again.
And I was really giggling so much I switched my microphone on. I do apologise.
Bless. Right, we have the pit lane emptying. Number 93, McLaren. Eddie Cheever, the third, at the wheel of it. And super sub from January when he came to do some driver coaching in the Ferrari race, and because he had his crash helmet with him, suddenly found himself driving in the 12 hours.
Yeah, very quick driver as well is Eddie Cheever. We've seen him do great things on both sides of the Atlantic, whether it be racing here in Europe or over in the States as well. I was asking him yesterday, is he heading out to Daytona to do the 24-hour this year? He said, I'm out there. He's a spotter this year. He's not competing, so he's taking on a different duty at the Daytona 24-hour, which of course is only a month away now, isn't it?
Indeed so. Right, 55 Ferrari. Stefano Costantini at the wheel of it, who was part of the AF Corsa Pro-Am effort in Fanatec GT Endurance Cup this season gone, and former Ferrari champion, so a very quick driver again in Ferraris is Stefano Costantini. We'd seen, I think, the Porsche, hadn't we, of Marco Casera go out, and 52, which is Giorgio Sanaggiotto, has lost a lap time for exceeding track limits at turn 1. So first corner of the lap, boom, the rest of the lap is wasted.
Yeah, not what you want, is it, really?
Come the race, just to make the point, that the first transgression is noted. The second one is, whoops, as a big wobble occurs there for Costantini. The second one is a warning. You get to fourth, your fourth strike is a penalty. So up it goes, and then you start again. So your fifth is effectively your first.
Your first again, and then
on it goes, and then everything resets at the 6-hour mark.
Right. Okay.
So whatever you've got at that point disappears, and you.
And in terms of the penalty, is that time penalty or is that drive-through and then becomes stop-go?
It's time, and I asked the stewards what you do if, for example, you are looking at a driver with his second, fourth strike, if you like, it's down to their discretion. So, you know, if it's a constant offender, it might be a drive-through, but normally it would be a 5-second penalty at the next pit stop. But if the car is regularly offending, then something's got to be done. So it's at the steward's discretion as to how lenient or otherwise they wish to be.
So Constantini, having had a bit of a wiggly moment on the previous lap, looks slightly neater and tidier as he weaved his way through turns 2, 3 and 4 and in towards the hairpin at turn number 5.
It's nice to see a Ferrari in something other than just red, isn't it?
It is, actually. I was looking at that, and that's the car that Laurent Demise shares with Jamie Stanley as well, isn't it? So, yeah, very different livery on the Ferrari. As you say, you know, they all largely tend to be, understandably, red, all based around with the Italian tricolore stripe down the centre. So it's not, but it looks more stars and stripes, almost.
It does. It is the fastest in this session, 1:54.524. There is number 61 then, which is now Jean-Claude Sarda at the wheel of it, another of the AM class Ferraris. I know there are fewer cars, but the whole session just feels different, doesn't it? Now it feels almost more leisurely. It's not, because people are still pressing on, but with fewer cars on the racetrack, it doesn't have quite the same amount of urgency.
No, Jean-Claude Sarda pushing on hard at the wheel of the number 61 car. He's largely done most of his racing on the other side of the Atlantic and was a champion in the Ferrari North US Series in Copa-Shell in 2015. He was the GT World Challenge US champion in the AM category back in 2021. I'm not sure, have we seen him at the Gulf Tower before? We have.
I thought we had in January, yeah.
The name rang a bell. So, looking at the sector times from Jean-Claude Sarda, of course improving because he's on his early stage flying laps, but I'm not sure that it's going to shuffle the car too much up through the order.
Eddie Cheever's gone fastest in Q4, 1:51.660, and is now 12 on the average. So it's another Pro-Am car. Pro-Am pole is up for grabs here, isn't it? We've not had Brendan, sorry, no, 7 has done. It's a 3-driver Pro-Am car. Other 4-driver Pro-Am cars, Cheever's car amongst them. So yeah, number 7 McLaren can't retaliate, but Eddie Cheever now having to try and get in an even quicker lap to compensate for any deficiency of teammates. So we've had a 54, a 52, a 51, and now Eddie Cheever hustles on. Pro-Am might shuffle, might not get a change for pole, but the order might change behind that.
Yeah, Eddie Cheever was quicker through the first sector, but was a little bit slower through the second sector. Here he comes now up towards the end of the lap, so pretty much flat out as he flicked the car through what was turn number 10 then and 11 up towards 12 and 13 underneath the hotel at turn number 14. Be careful, don't run the car too far out wide on the barrier, up through the gear, build the speed through the quick turn number 15 and then onto the brakes at turn number 16. Good first sector, better than anybody in this part of the qualifying session so far. Lost a bit of time through the middle sector of the lap. Can he improve on the 1:51.660 that he did previously? And the answer to that as he comes over the start finish line, I'm afraid, is no. Slightly slower, 1:57.029, so at the moment no improvement.
That last lap for Cheever then, a 51.953. He remains the fastest in Q4, but there's traffic up the road. The car that's second in Pro-Am has now got Murat Ciharoğlu at the wheel of it, and his last lap was a 57.0, so he's much, much slower, so not being able to take the number 33 Kessel Ferrari into the mix for Pro-Am pole. And how are we doing with the AMs, which you were talking about earlier on? That is still being headed, isn't it, by
Ram Racing.
Number 8.
Yeah. Yeah, which is done for in this session, and the average of the Ram Racing Mercedes is 1:53.9. The average for the second quickest car in GT3 AM is a 1:54.4 at the moment, and Daniel Diamato is currently lapping in that car, albeit slightly slower than some of the other cars I've done earlier on in the session.
I must confess, I think Ian Loggy and Morgan Tilbrook have been quite generously put into AM rather than Pro-Am, given that they've got Mikael Grenier with them as a silver-graded driver. So that car for an AM win, but Mikael Grenier would normally be elevated out of that, I would have thought. Eddie Cheever has just gone through and is now up to 11th on the average and third in Pro-Am. It's inception ahead of the two Garage 59 McLarens now, so Eddie Cheever's efforts net a gain on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, we've also got Jamie Stanley in the 55 as a silver-graded driver, haven't we? Who's still in the AM category as well, so obviously just the way they scoop them up. Daniel Diamato at the wheel of the number 26 car, looking to see whether he can work that car further up through the order. Oh, sorry, at the wheel of the number 91 car, I should say, looking if he can work that car further up through the order. Last lap time he did was a 1 minute 54.281, which is 1 minute 54.281 is the second quickest driver so far. But for Daniel Diamato, what do the sector times look like this time through? He is down in Sector 1 and in Sector 2, so doesn't look as though there's going to be any further improvement on this lap for the Team Baron number 91 Ferrari.
Jamie Stanley, as you say, in that AM class as well. He's behind the wheel of 55 and pressing on. And Daniele Diamato improves, a 152.268 then as he goes over the line there in the Baron Ferrari.
Yeah, down in Sector 1, down in Sector 2. He made it all up in Sector 3. Good close of the lap for Daniel Diamato. And that now does put him as the quickest driver in that car. And actually moves the Team Baron Ferrari. It's now second in the GT3 AM class. And on average times, if he can find another 4/100ths of a second, it would potentially take up pole in the GT3 AM class away from the Ram Racing Mercedes. So Daniel Diamato has got very little choice but to keep pressing on. And he's got time in which to do it as well, David, because there's still just under 4 minutes of the session to go.
Yeah, it's worth persevering, isn't it? And as others perhaps think about pitting early, finishing the session early, then there is still the opportunity to, on a clearer road, have that lap time. And we've just got through Mahat Chiroglu. Eddie Cheever's last lap was a slow one, a 2:12. So yeah, this now sorts out effectively the fifth row and back, doesn't it, of those that have a fourth driver.
Yeah, so again, as per the previous lap for Daniel Diamato, slower than he's previously gone through Sector 1, slower than he's previously gone through Sector 2. It all needs to come in Sector 3 if he wants to just try and chip away at that small deficit that he's trying to make up at this stage. So he's heading in towards the final few corners of the lap. Sector 3 was what did it for him last time, where he was just able to find that very, very small improvement. There goes through Jean-Claude Sarda at the wheel of the number 61 AF Course Ferrari. And already now we're starting to get lap times being disallowed. Number 55 disallowed. Jamie Stanley,
yeah,
gone beyond the circuit limits.
He just got up to 28th, but little good will it do him, I fear. So 2 minutes and change on the clock. Another good livery on a Ferrari, isn't it? The AF Corsa Jean-Claude Sarda car number 61, that is shared with the Pret father and sons, Philippe and fashion head Louis, and Conrad Grunewald, who was a class winner in GT World Challenge America last season. So up towards the line comes Jean-Claude Sarda, up towards the timing line, former Ferrari North America champion. And as he breaks the beam, what does that lap do for him? Keeps the car 23rd on the combined average times. So he's going to get one more lap out of it, maybe even two. In some cases, of course, where you're talking about AMs like this, it's as much track time as a qualifying time, because for the sake of one place on the grid, you might not be achieving much, but actually keeping the car out there and giving the driver yet more mileage can be useful.
Yeah, very much so, and even more so after the fact that there were some long delays yesterday, truncated running in some of the test sessions, which meant that, yeah, maybe some drivers got the lion's share of the running yesterday, and others sort of picked the short straw in reality, and every session that they went into was either curtailed or was delayed or didn't quite happen. So yeah, maybe that could well be a very, very valid point there. So we're into the final as good as 60 seconds of this qualifying session now. So anybody heading over the start-finish line will squeeze one further one out. Jean-Claude Sarda still looking to press on. He should if he nails this lap and does it at the kind of speed we're expecting, I think he might. There's a possibility, yeah, he could do another lap after this one. He'd get over the start-finish line with just seconds to spare if he sticks with it on this lap.
So he heads towards the line. We've got 35 seconds of the session to go. Heads up towards the beam. So Sada, if he wants to, can go again, but we'll see whether he heads for the pit lane. That's the section we were talking about for underneath the hotel, where there is very, very little runoff area. That's what makes it feel like a street circuit. And under the floodlights, there's a great atmosphere around there as well. The cars go in front of the hotel, lots of people sitting outside watching the cars, drink in hand. And over the timing line, they staying out. Jean-Claude Sada's lap is a 1:57.462.
And he did get over the start-finish line before the checkered flag, so he can go again if he wishes to. But the clock has now ticked to 0, so he will pretty much be the last car to take the checkered flag. Murat Çahadaroglu comes through at the wheel of the 33 Ferrari and cannot improve his time. Somewhat slower than the rest of the drivers in that car, actually. He's about 3 seconds off the pace of the others in that car, so still a chunk to find, but he still might be feeling slightly second-hand after his incident yesterday, because it was a fairly big lick, wasn't it, for Murat Çahadaroglu when he went off?
Yes, and as you said earlier, delayed things while they repaired the barriers as much as put a fire out and moved the damaged car. So you remember it was a Kessel Ferrari that was in strife back in January. So the flag is out, the grid is barring any penalties, formed and a spin there for Marco Casarat in the Porsche. That's down at the 6-7 chicane. Last few cars then to take the checkered flag, but yeah, after all the drama to shape the front of the grid, a much calmer Q4, but it's been an interesting hour and a bit of qualifying. It's been, yeah, intriguing. I thought Mercedes might have the pace. They might just have the edge in terms of qualifying pace. Well, that has proved to be the case. It's going to be an all-Mercedes front row of the grid come the start of the 11th edition of the Gulf 12 Hours taking place here tomorrow. But 12 hours of running, anything could happen. Lots of twists in the tails, and we simply do not know. We've seen no single manufacturer dominate over the course of the last 4 years. So Jean-Claude Sada is just about to head underneath the hotel for the final time. So turn number 14, he will be working his way through now, up towards the very fast right-hander at turn number 15, the recovering Porsche after its spin behind him on the road, but we know full well that that is not going to account for a great deal of lap time for that car after its spin. So for Jean-Claude Sada, sector times again, just suggesting that I don't think we're going to see a great deal of improvement. He was quicker through the first sector, to be fair, but slower through sector 2 and sector 3, and it didn't quite happen for him in the end. But it's never going to be a massive gain anyway, is it? The car's 23rd on the average, so it's pretty much where it's going to be, with all due deference. But again, you know, here we're talking about people for whom that Bahrain 1000 is absolutely aimed, isn't it? The AMs get a quick co-driver and a couple of other AMs to share with you, and you've got a good Pro-Am combination. Right, so the SRO technical team getting the cars into Parc Fermé for the top 3 in the classes. The scrutineering handled by SRO, which means that Claude Sermont, who is the master of the BOP, is on hand along with his technical team to make sure the cars comply to all of the regulations. There, down the pit road, comes Murat Çahadaroglu, who in the end, that number 33 Ferrari, fell quite a long way down the order, didn't it? So it is 18th on the grid, having been better placed early on. Yeah, it was leading the Pro-Am class, wasn't it, in the early stages of qualifying, but yeah, will ultimately start way down through the order. And his lap time is something like 4.8 seconds off the car's best. So again, you take that into account on the average. It's all going to come unravelled, isn't it? Yeah. But the fact that the car is on the grid is a very good thing. Aluminium Company Director Murat Çahadaroglu, Turkish driver, ready to get out of the car there. Being pushed up the pit lane is the number 92 Porsche. Yep, so all of the rest of the cars then just being pushed down in towards the Parc Fermé area as the sun set many hours ago here at Yas Marina, but we'll look forward to the sun rising tomorrow, David, on our first ever 12-hour non-stop race in the Gulf 12 Hours. Can't wait. I mean, it's a great grid. It's a great entry. There's a championship on the line, although it is pretty much something's got to go very badly wrong for the championship leaders not to win it. But even so, there's that to keep a focus on during the race as well, plus all the different class battles. So there's a lot to look forward to, and you know, a 12-hour race. I know there's the Bathurst 12 hours, but there aren't that many of them. We have different race lengths. Yeah, we've got 24 hours at Spa. We have 8 hours at Indy, 9 at Kyalami and so forth. But for the first time, a 12-hour continuous race here. We keep talking about how the dynamic is going to change with it being effectively 11 one-hour sprint races. It really is going to be fascinating, absolutely. And how the teams divvy up the driving rotation, whether it's single stints because of the temperature, whether they can afford to double stint, whether they're going to keep some drivers in reserve for the end. Yeah, there's an awful lot to keep us guessing.
And at the venue that we're doing it as well, you know, that there's lots of manufactured circuits, and this is a circuit that has been created. You know, it's a Tilke circuit, but it's got a good feel to it. It's a nice part of the world for the final big sports car race of the year, and that's what attracts the people as well. It's a very unique venue, isn't it?
It is. And again, what both driving force events for this and for the Bahrain 1000, the Pro-Am 1000, what SRO for the Endurance Cup try to do is go to Formula One venues, because it's where drivers want to race. They see these amazing places on television and they would like to go and race there. They don't want to be at club racing venues. And you know, this is exactly the kind of circuit that appeals, with great hotels. There's a good tourism element as well for families if they want to come, and the weather is good. You know, it ticks so many boxes for the pros and for the AMs particularly.
And it's a relaxed atmosphere, and we'll be going to the paddock dinner, which will be streamed live on Facebook as well, very, very briefly as well. So we're done for the day, David.
Yeah, on track there's going to be Pirelli activity very shortly, but qualifying is done, a provisional grid is sorted, and we look forward to the Gulf 12 hours tomorrow. But for now, from Alan Hyde and Mark Werrell and David Addison, for now, it is goodbye, and we look forward to what promises to be a fantastic race tomorrow with, as I say, a grid pretty much formed and all the drama to come for the 11th Gulf 12 hours and the final round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Fuel up. We'll see you tomorrow.